Hello, welcome to another Slade Forum question and answer session. This particular question and answer session is another one with Noddy Holder, the singer with Slade. We'd like to thank Noddy Holder for his time, and we'd like to thank Susan Holder for her help and her tech support at Nod's end while the meeting was going on. We hope you enjoyed the questions which Nod selected for answering. See you on the forum, see you on YouTube. Cheers.
I've just had my flu jab, so my arm's aching. I've had my winter flu jab.
Right. Thanks for doing this one with us. We've got the questions that you picked here, so we'll zip through.
You don't have to stick to them. I just picked the ones that just stood out to me.
That's good. Yeah, we'll do
the ones
those.
you want to ask. I don't mind what you ask, really.
Okie dokie.
I've had a few letters and messages at the office saying I didn't answer enough questions last time. But I mean, that's the nature of the beast.
That's how it goes, yeah.
Want me to do it in a bit of detail and not have one-word answers or whatever. So, they'll have to put up with what I got, really.
No, it's great. I had a few more questions this morning. It's the nature of the beast, isn't it?
Whatever we can get in, yeah.
Right. Ian, speak.
Off we jolly well go then. Once again, thanks for doing this, Nod. It's a pleasure. First question we've got, it's clear that Little Richard influenced your unique vocal. Who else did you admire as a vocalist that influenced you?
Well, all the old rock and rollers, really. I loved Chuck Berry, I loved Larry Williams, I loved Elvis, I loved some of the people like Big Joe Turner, people like that, some of the blues men as well. But Little Richard was the main influence. He's the one that floored me. Before that, I'd sort of sang the pop hits of the day and swing stuff, sort of Sinatra, that ilk of stuff, Ella Fitzgerald and the pop people of the day, Paul Anka, people like that. I did that, sang that at the working men's clubs. But when I saw Little Richard on screen at the ABC, as it used to be called, in Warsaw, in The Girl Can't Help It, I'd heard his records, but I'd never seen him on screen till the movie The Girl Can't Help It. And it was shock tactics, really. He was big pompadour hairstyle, shiny suit, all the band were cooking behind him with a brass section. And the main thing that struck me as well was he stood up playing the piano. We'd never seen that in UK before. The piano players in Britain didn't stand up and play the piano. And it was just fantastic. And that voice just knocked me out. I mean, just fabulous. And what I liked about it, and which probably influenced me as much as anybody or anything really, and influenced my lyric writing. I know a lot of people say that I write too much about sex in my lyrics. But if you hear Little Richard songs, they're all about sex. I mean, rock and roll, it means sex. It was an old blues term that meant sex. And I was checking out on the hit CD, because everyone said, oh, all you write about is sex, sex, sex. And I was looking at the hit CD, the new one that's coming out, and there's 42 tracks on there, and there's only a third of them probably about anything about love and sex. So I don't know where people have got that idea from. But I take it as a compliment that they think I write about sex, because that, to me, that's what rock and roll's all about. But Little Richard's the main man. And the biggest compliment I ever had as a singer was, of course, I suppose most of you know the story where John Lennon came into the studio in New York where Chaz was mixing one of our tracks. And he said to Chaz, I love this bloke, he sounds like me. So that's probably one of the best compliments I've ever had. But I've had compliments of a lot of great vocalists whose compliments I sort of relish. I mean, it was great when you get people who can really sing who give you a compliment. I mean, my own band, obviously Slade, they never complimented me in my life on my singing. So that's the way it is.
Were you ever tempted to do the piano thing? Learn to play it or use
play
it?
The piano? No, I never did. it was always guitar for me, because I always had that image in my head as you know, with a standing there looking cool with a guitar, even from the days when you used to stand in front of the mirror either with a cricket bat or a tennis racket. You know, I always thought it looked more rock and roll with the guitar around your neck than playing the piano. So no, I never really took to or even tried to learn the piano. Really, it didn't sort of hit me. I wish I had. I wish as a kid I'd have sort of learnt the proper rudiments of piano. Yeah, probably.
Did your mum and dad have a piano?
We always had a piano in the house. Yeah, always had a piano. I used to tat on it, you know, put pling plong little tunes out on it, but I never took it seriously. But one we had in my mum and dad's house was me grand's, and when my mum died and I had to clear all her house out, I found the receipt. My mum had kept it. I found the receipt from my grand's piano, which was from 1928. She'd bought it from a shop in Warsaw, this piano, and I think it had cost something like 2 and 6pence in old money in 1928. And my daughter ended up with it, Cherise. It sort of went down the line because I had another piano later on, which Django played, which is a much newer model. But Cherise had the original one, but I think she's got rid of it now because she hadn't got room for it. So she's give it away to charity, I think, now.
It was from Taylor's, wasn't it?
Taylor's, you got it. That's the shop. That's the shop. On Bridge Street, weren't it? Yeah.
Yeah, greatest building in Warsaw. If you look at it, people moan about that, but it's the greatest building in Warsaw.
Well, I used to buy all my records there when I was a kid.
Yeah. Right. Another question.
Go on.
Right. Go on, you, Chris.
No, I'm sort of going a bit off the. People have asked about when you did the thing with Mark Radcliffe. There was a promise of a DVD. Is that ever likely to come out? Is that ever likely to come out?
Yeah. I'm going to bring it out at some time. I did have a look at it when I first did the tour, and it come out pretty good. It was, you know, it was all very good. It didn't need anything doing to it, really. Might need a bit of enhancing from the lighting point of view, because, you know, when you do a live thing like that and the lighting changes during the show, it might need a bit of that doing. But as far as the audio and everything else, absolutely pristine it was great. So yeah, I think I will bring it out at some point.
Yeah.
That was a great tour, actually. I mean, I wanted to do more dates. I wanted to extend it on, but I wanted to do it with Radcliffe because it was really extension of what we were doing on radio together. And but he's on air every day. Well, he was at that time. He was on air every day, and so it was difficult to go too far because he had to be back to get on air. So he was travelling through the night a couple of times after the shows. But I had great fun on it. It was a 2-hour show, 2.5 hours some nights, because the second half was ad lib. It was never the same 2 nights running. It was great, the second half, because you get, first half was sort of reflection of my career with film clips and stuff like that. But the second half was questions from the audience. And we used to have them put questions in a bin in the bar before the show started. And then Radcliffe, in the interval, he'd pick the best ones out or the funniest ones out, not tell me. I didn't know what was coming up in the second half. And we'd have a mic going around the audience as well in the second half. So I'd get questions from the audience. And the first or second night, the first question out the hat that he threw at me, and we kept it in every night on the tour after that because it went down the storm. The first question out the hat was, Susie Quattro, did you? And it broke the place down. So we kept that one in every night. But it was a great tour. But I forgot how hard touring was because we were doing 3 or 4 in a row, and it being a 2-hour show, it was pretty knackering. You know, I forgot how, at my age now, I forgot how knackering it was, especially the motorways being packed now and everything like that. It was not so bad when I was on the road, doing it on the road. But we had great fun. We had great audiences, and we had some real good laughs on that tour.
Does the audience thing surprise you? Considering that's another one of the questions, that Slade finished in 91. And next year there's going to be another convention. Okay. And they're all the time. Are you surprised by the sort of the commitment that the fans still organise things and turn up to see you and that sort of thing?
It's a great great compliment. I think it's a fantastic compliment that there's still a hardcore there that still love the stuff we do. I mean, there's a faction of you lot, very small faction, I have to say, that do criticise everything we do, no matter what we try and do. I mean, even with the new album that's out now, the Hits album that's coming out in a couple of weeks, I mean, I've already had people slagging it off. Why are you bringing that out now, a new Hits compilation? We've got all that stuff, blah, 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 blah. Well, you know, there's millions, billions of people around the world who haven't got Slade,
exactly.
Haven't got a Slade collection. Yeah. That's who it's for. It's not aimed at the fan base, really. We're trying to aim it at a bigger and wider market and a younger market, maybe. I mean, quite frankly, I've okayed the stuff before it's come out on the CD and the vinyl. And I'll tell you what, it sounds better than ever, the way it's been remastered and everything. I mean, it sounds bloody great to me. I hope everybody else thinks the same, but it's really gone up a notch as far as I'm concerned. It's bloody fantastic. So, I mean, I don't really care what people say anymore. You have to take your career and you take it or leave it. I mean, it's the same when people keep getting at me, why don't you bring a DVD out of all the clips of TV shows and stuff like that? But it's not that easy. We don't own that stuff. We don't, you know, we have no rights to that stuff. And everybody thinks, well, we can just bring it out easy. And people that do bring it out quite often are doing it illegally. You know, they're pinching the stuff and you can get done for it. And we don't work that way. You know, we don't own a lot of, only the, you know, the few videos that were out sort of in the 80s sort of time. That's really the only clips we actually own. Things like Top of the Pops and that, it's a nightmare to get, you know, license that from the BBC. It's a nightmare, all that type of stuff. And you can see most of it online anyway now on YouTube if you want to watch the stuff. But I know it's a bone of contention amongst the fans, but it's not as easy a job as everybody makes it out to be. And I know there's a couple of the fans who crib about it and say, oh, you can do it easy, you can do this, that and the other. It's not easy. It's not easy. And getting the rights it's a lot of work and it's a nightmare.
One thing I'd chip in is that there's certain clips from later on in your career with Slade that didn't appear on Wall of Hits or the very best of, you know, on the DVD of that you would own. Things like 7 Year Bitch and Mysterious Mr. Jones. I don't think they've appeared on DVD.
Weren't they on the original Wall of Hits?
No.
Well, maybe they were owned originally by RCA then, because they would have paid for them. So maybe they were owned by them. I don't know why they weren't. I can't remember why they weren't on Wall of Hits then. I don't know which label. Did Polydor bring Wall of Hits out? I can't remember. So maybe there was an ownership problem there. Maybe. I don't know. But we did it at the time when we were with RCA, which they paid for them. I mean, you never know now because we're back with RCA's BMG that we're back with now, so you never know. We were caught up in rights issues for a very, very long time. Yeah. We did a big sort of deal towards the end of the 70s, whereby me and Jim got the rights back to a lot of our stuff, but we didn't actually own it until Chaz's debts were paid off to Polydor. So it was another 10 years before those debts got paid off. So although we, in legal terms, owned the rights, we couldn't do anything with it for 10 years because we were still under that contract. Well, Chaz was still under that contract and there was a lot of money that had to be paid back. So we didn't have the rights to actually use the stuff until right at the end of the 80s. And this is what things work out like that. You know, when you're talking about rights and stuff like that, it was very complicated. And people, I know Don in the past has said, he makes nothing from Merry Christmas and the old catalogue. He does. He makes exactly the same from the recording point of view, and as recording artists, Dave and Don make exactly the same as me and Jim. Exactly the same. It's a four-way split, always has been. The only thing that's any different is the publishing side of things. That's the only thing that's different, you know, from the writers, publishers share. They don't earn a share of that. But from performing on the record, they earn exactly the same as me and Jim do, from Merry Christmas and every track we've ever done.
I don't think a lot of people understand that.
And even on the 80s product, quite frankly, on the 80s product, they co-own it. Me and Jim only own the 70s product. Dave and Don own equally all the 80s product with me and Jim. We don't own any more than they do.
I don't think a lot of people understood that. So you just say
that.
They don't. Nod. Yeah, I know they do now.
But now I've told you. And so when Don comes on and he can't remember that he owns some of it, he does own some. I've had to remind him and send him emails many times when he's gone on about it. I've had to send him an email saying, but you do actually own all the 80 stuff as much as I do. You know, and he's not quite, you know, he's still, memory still goes here and there sometimes.
Yeah, I think that the phrase Nod and Jim's pension fund are a standard thing for the thing to, you know.
Well, of course it's a standard thing because of Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
But I mean, Dave and Don make a lot of money out of Merry Christmas as well from performing on the record. They make money every year and have done for the last 47 years. They've made money from Merry Christmas. And when we did the new deal with BMG just in the last year, which is now what we're starting to pay back with the Hits album, you know, you have to pay everything back. They don't just give it you and say, bye-bye, you can go away now and spend it. You have to pay it back. And Dave and Don did very well out of, you know, signing the deal.
That's cleared that one up now.
Yeah.
After Chas, you managed the band, which must have taken up a lot of your time. In hindsight, do you regret not getting a new manager after Chas?
It didn't actually take up a lot of my time because what I did as a manager then, in the 80s, was exactly what I'd done in the 70s. I oversaw all the deal, the budgeting for the recording sessions, the budgeting for the tours. I'd done all that in the 70s anyway. What would change in the 80s was I was doing exactly the same thing, but the thing was I used to have to go up to the record company and okay record sleeves and stuff like that. That's all really. We had a business manager that handled all the contracts and all that sort of side of things. I didn't do that side of things. I checked it all out, but we had a business manager, Colin Newman, who looked after all that side of things. So I was only really doing what I did in the 70s anyway. So it didn't take up any more time, but the fact that I had to go up to the label to okay things, marketing strategies and all that sort of business. The others weren't really interested in none of that, and somebody had got to do it. And quite frankly, when we, in the 80s, when I don't think we would have, the experience we'd had by that point, we wouldn't have took any advice of anybody. We'd been around for, 15 years. We'd had all that success under our belt by then. The people who we could have gone to as managers in an artistic sense, we knew as much as they did. So why should we pay out 20% to somebody who could tell us what we knew already? We weren't prepared to listen to anybody else as a four-piece group because we knew a lot of stuff by then. And we did actually, where we needed the manager in the 80s from point of view was in America. And Sharon Osbourne became our manager in America in the 80s. So, it wasn't just a case of I took over the management. I was doing what I'd always done, just a little bit more in terms of the marketing side of things, that's all. But it's mainly down to budgeting for tours, budgeting for recording budgets. When they give you so much money to record and you have to bring it in on budget. And the same with touring. I mean, we always lost money touring, always lost money, even in our biggest heyday, because you didn't get sponsorship in those days. It was only in America you were playing at massive arenas. Even if we sold out, which we did, we sold out all the time in Europe. But the profit margin, because we took out a big show equipment, we shipped it all around the world, whether we went to Japan, Australia, we took out all our own lights, all our own PA, we took everything with us. So everywhere we went in the world, you saw Slade 100% A1 show. And it cost a fortune. It cost a fortune. And plus our earnings were coming into the UK and we were paying 93% tax. So we were making, you know, 7p in the pound. So, you know, it takes a lot of budgeting to keep your heads above water, keep the band afloat. We were making a lot of money, yes, for sure. But we were also being charged a lot of money in tax and spending a lot of money taking the stuff around the world and making sure the live show was great all around the world. People don't understand all this, and neither should they. It's not, you know, it's nothing to do with them. As long as they're enjoying the music and the records, they're quite happy. What I can't put up with now, which I don't give a toss about anyway, is people criticising what we do. I mean, slagging us off for this, slagging us off for that. They don't really realise the mechanics behind it all. Everything we do for a reason. There's a reason behind it. We might bring an album out that people don't think we should have done. Say, let's take Crackers, for example. Let's take Crackers as a good example. People say, why the bugger hell did you do Crackers? Well, we did it because Telstar Records, we were in the middle of a deal with RCA Records, but Telstar Records came to us and offered us a fortune. A fortune. Biggest advance we've ever had in our lives for one album. One album. And they wanted a Christmas party hits album. And they were offering us a load of dough to do it. We'd never had a big advance before. Not to that extent. And we did that album in 2 weeks. We recorded it, mixed it in 2 weeks. And it was our biggest selling album in the UK in the 80s. And, you know, sold far more than Rogues Gallery or any of those, Till Death Do Us Part. Crackers, everybody can laugh at it all you like, but it sold the most albums in the UK in the whole of the 80s. It kept us afloat. We had a lot of money, we made a lot of money out of it. And Dave and Don had a huge tax bill. Well, we all had tax bills at the time, but Dave and Don needed at that time to pay off the tax bill. And it all worked in. So that's why we do these things. We don't just do them for the sake of it, you know. It's a business, you know, we, artistically as well, but it's a business. And you have to keep going for the 25 years we kept going. You have to look on it as a business and keep the bloody thing afloat and keep our heads above water, especially on the road. Otherwise, you get deeper and deeper and deeper in debt. And we'd have had to split up, God, donkey's years before. America's a good example. There's another example in the 70s. I mean, people slag off what we do in America, the sort of show we put on in America. But we learned as we went along in America. People say, oh, you were doing this audience participation thing in America and they didn't take to it. They didn't take to it in some areas. No, they didn't. But we learned. But I would say out of 100% of the shows, I'd say 75%, we went a storm. 25% were dodgy. And the critics didn't like us. We were like aliens coming from nowhere. Aliens. But what did they want us to do? Stop being Slade? Be like the American acts? We went back 10 years later. And every act I saw when we were out there 10 years later was doing our act. We were just there 10 years too early, really. They were all doing our audience participation act. And a case of chatting to the audience between songs. We'd always done that anyway. And quite frankly, after Don's accident, I had to chat to the audience between songs because Jim was behind me telling Don how the song we were going to do went. So I had to talk to the audience to give him time to do that. So there's a reason for everything. Anybody can slag off what they want. There's a reason. And, you know, I know you don't understand the reasons because you're not in a band. You weren't there at the time. You know, and I understand why people get, oh, if you'd have done this in America, if you'd done that in America. Nobody complained at the time. Everybody was quite happy to go along with the strategy at the time. Okay, it didn't work. we changed our way of concert. You go and look on YouTube at the concert we did at Winterland in San Francisco, where we played, I have to say, loads of times, even though the West Coast was not good for us. But we went to Winterland loads of times and played there. There's a whole concert on YouTube. You tell me that's the same concert as people will see in Britain or in Europe. It is not the same concert. Saying, oh, you know, all this audience participation. There's a bit of that, but it's nowhere near the same style of concert that we were doing in Europe. So we learned as we went along, and we even changed our tactics for Nobody's Fool to try and adapt to their radio, what they wanted for radio. We tried everything, and we did it again in the 80s. But if it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. It looked like it was going to happen in the 80s. We were playing, we could top some huge venues around America, top 15, 20,000 seaters ourselves, with nobody else on the bill to help us. You know, so it wasn't a dud as far as we're concerned. We came back, we were dead in the water, but I'll tell you what, we were playing fucking good when we come back. After the first time we went, we were playing shit hot because we'd have to work our balls off out there. And the same thing in the 80s, really. I mean, we'd gone out, Runaway had become a massive hit in America because of MTV.
Yeah.
MTV loved the video. They loved that Scottish castle with all the pipers and all the business. Well, they thought it was Scottish. All the pipers playing. They thought that's where we fucking lived. They thought we lived in that bleeding castle. They loved it. And it was a heavy rotation on every half an hour on MTV. That's why that record was a huge hit there. MTV was so powerful when we went back. And of course, we'd had the backup of Quiet Riot getting a big hit with Come On Feel the Noise as well. And we had a big label behind us, CBS behind us as well. So if probably Jim hadn't got ill and we'd completed the Aussie tour, you know, it may have took us another step up the ladder, but it wasn't to be. So me personally, I can't regret what we did in America. We tried everything in the kitchen sink. We tried everything there. Things just got in our way as we went along. But you go back there now, I've been back to America loads of times, and I speak to bands and whatever out there, and all of them say, we saw you play in New York, but people are in big bands now. We saw you in New York, we saw it in Philadelphia, we saw it in Chicago. They all raved about it. And really, the critics didn't understand us. But it's not just us, they don't understand the British humour for a start, within a band. You know, we could have gone there and been cool and whatever. That's what they want. You know, don't sign Slade if that's what you want, because that's not what we were about. You know, it wasn't what the band was about. So do we change? Do we knock all that on the head and become what they want? And then what do we do when we come back here to Europe or Australia? Do they want that? No, they didn't want that. If we'd have come back being ultra cool and not doing the participation stuff and that, everybody had been going mad about that if we'd knocked it all on the head when we came back to Europe. So, you know, you have to go with your instinct. You have to go with what you think's right and what you love doing. Not what somebody else thinks you should be doing or should be loved doing. You have to do what you love doing, because, quite frankly, I've been on the road in that time, if you're talking about mid-70s, I'd been on the road for 15 years. I knew how to handle an audience. I knew how to look after it. I knew what an audience liked. I knew what an audience didn't like. And if they didn't like it, mainly in the States I'm talking about, it's because they were stoned out their fucking heads. You know, they couldn't get it together. They were off the trees most in some venues, in some cities. But you can't wangle that. You ask any people around that were over there at that time who saw us play. I'm on about people who know the business, the musicians who were on the road. You ask any of them who saw us out there and say, everybody said to us, it's a maritime. That's all it is a maritime. And things dropped in our way, you know. We couldn't go out there and live like Fleetwood Mac did, Led Zeppelin did, Sabbath did, Ozzy did. They all went out there and they stayed there for 5 or 6 years. They did the odd jaunts back here. Fleetwood Mac did the odd jaunts back here. You know, a few gigs in Europe, half a dozen gigs in Europe, then went back to the States. And that's what you had to do then in them days. We couldn't do that. We went back a lot of times, but we couldn't neglect Europe. You lot would have gone mad if we'd have left here and gone for 7 years. You lot over here in Europe, you'd have gone berserk. So, you know, we had to weigh it up how we could do it. And people blame Chaz putting us top of the bill, whatever. First two we did, we weren't top of the bill. We opened for Humble Pie. We were the opening act. We were learning. We never mic'd the drums up before. We saw Humble Pie the first night. All mics ran the drums. You didn't need it in Britain then because you're doing theatres, so we didn't really need it. Then we saw all this mic'd up, guitars mic'd up, everything mic'd up. But we learned very quickly. We learned. And that's the way it was. But, you know, it's experience. And you learn as you go along. That's the way it is.
Right.
Yes. I think hindsight's a good thing with people.
Correct.
Another question we've got here is, which one gig would you love to relive? You know, your greatest memory of being in Slade?
Oh, good. We always had great gigs, pretty much.
Yep.
Even in America when we had a Duff audience or whatever, our gigs were usually great. We usually had a thing where we started off where most bands finish. That was my attitude. We went on and we started off where most bands would be happy to end the show with. So most of our gigs were like that. But it's weird when you're in a band that there's certain nights where you hit another plane.
Yeah.
You go on another plane that's higher than your best or what you think's your best. And you go one step further. And I mean, people might say, from our point of view, it'd be Reading. From our point of view, it might be another festival, wherever. But within a band, it's for different reasons. And the two stick out to me. There was one in Amsterdam at like an opera hall. I forget what it's called now. But it was like their big opera hall there one night. And everything was perfect. Everything was perfect. Every plane was perfect. The lights were perfect. The sound was perfect. The audience let you play your dynamics. You didn't have to go hell-bent for leather. The show could take its dynamics. You know, you could do your ups, your downs, blah, blah, blah. You didn't have to go bang, 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 bang in the rear. They let the show develop as it went along. There was that one in Amsterdam, which was another plane. And there was one, I think the other one that comes to mind, I'm just deading them off the top of my head. The other one was, I think it was in Winnipeg in Canada. And you just go to a different plane. You know, we always had a great run, but then when you come off and you go, that was magical. You come off and you go, that was magical. And you couldn't have done anything any better that night. And it happens a few times, but those are the times you like. You always like playing, but then when you reach another plane, it's great. It is great. You can't force it. It's just all this, everything aligns perfectly on that particular night. And everybody's playing at the right, you know, at the right feeling and everything's mashing right. But we were generally like that anyway, but I always liked it to go one step further. And quite often it did.
Another question we got was about guitars. You popped up at one point, mid-80s, with an Ovation Deacon guitar. The one that was like a bit like a Vox teardrop shape, slightly.
Yeah.
Do you still have that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did you use it in the studio?
That was one of the first Ovations ever made, that one. I bought it in America way back in the 70s when they first came out. It was one of the very first ones they made. I've still got it. And it appeared on a couple of records when I played acoustic guitar on a couple of records. Yeah, it was on there, yeah.
Brilliant.
Because it was electric as well as acoustic. It was electric acoustic.
I'll reunite you with this as well. You played this at Walsall.
Oh, okay, cool. When we had
the 25th anniversary thing.
Anniversary thing. Oh, yeah.
So if you see a picture, that's the one.
Okay, okay.
The
Well,
other-
people will want to know about that, won't they, I suppose? Why we
Yeah.
only played one song there. Well, the fact was, it was agreed before we ever went to the convention. I don't know what the other three would say, but certainly from my point of view, they said, are you going to play? And I said, no, we're not going to play. We hadn't played live together for, I don't know, 5 years or whatever it was. Can't remember. But I said, no, we're not just going to go on stage after 5 years, although we could have probably done it. We go on stage after 5 years. I mean, if we'd have been shit after 5 years not playing together, you lot had gone bloody berserk. You lot would have been the first to criticise us. And I said, no, we haven't got our own gear. We hadn't got our own guitars. And then when we got there, the other three may have agreed to it before, and I certainly didn't. In the dressing room, when we come up there, they were all pushing whoever's behind the scenes there, saying, oh, you've got to go back on, or you've got to play live, they're expecting it, blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, okay, to push comes to shove, we'll play one song, It was a compromise, let's say, which, went on and played one song and walked off. And I know there was mayhem when we walked off, and the other three wanted to carry on. But, we hadn't played together for a long time. We hadn't got our own gear. Why on earth would we play an half an hour set without our own gear, no rehearsal? I couldn't hear a thing on stage, quite frankly. I couldn't hear the PA, I couldn't hear nothing on stage. Why on earth would we do that? For the harshest crowd we probably could have had, which was the hardcore. So I just didn't see the sense in doing it. And so I put my foot down and walked off, and that was it. End of story, really.
I saw you when you walked on stage. I mean, all four of you walked on stage and you looked round and it was like, oh, we've been got.
Absolutely, we've been got. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, I did sell. Was it Malcolm Skellington who ran that show?
Yeah.
That anniversary thing. I mean, he was told before we went, certainly by me anyway, no way am I playing. No way am I playing. But, you get to talk to him in the heat of the moment when you're there and the crowd are chanting away. But, I mean, I was quite willing to do one song that we could get away with. We could play that like Falling Off a Log or 12 Bar Johnny Be Good. Yeah. So, we didn't really take much rehearsing or anything like that. We could go through the motions of doing that. But from the point of view of doing a half an hour hit show or something like that, it wasn't on because if we'd agreed to do it way beforehand, fair enough, but we hadn't, and that was it.
Yeah. We're just on the 2 minute mark now, so.
Oh bloody hell, it's gone quicker.
Yeah, it's good things do. Good things do. One quick question. What's the most outrageous thing you've read about yourself in the newspaper, and was it true?
Well, there's a couple of things. I suppose a lot of you lot know, because in the 80s, there was a big scandal about me in the mid-80s in all the Sunday papers that I was shagging this bint. And she called me the super stud 12 times a night and all that business, which was totally untrue. Although I am a 12 times a night man. But she was blagged and sold this story to the Sunday papers. And I mean, it was a bit of a nasty trick to do. But I found out later, I met both her and her agent, and they both rigged it up separately to make some money, basically, and to plug her career. She was a girl singer. And the other one was that the other outrageous one that was totally, well, as far as I know, it's untrue. I might have been very drunk at the time, but that I made a record with Anna Ford, the newsreader. That was the most outrageous thing I ever read about myself.
Well, on that bombshell, that's really...
I mean, somewhere. I just don't remember doing it.
We'll say thank you, I think, because we've got less than a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks so much.
I've enjoyed it. Take care.
Good. Still loads of questions, Nod.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
If daytime TV gets too much...
Album? Have you heard the Hits album?
Not the 25th of September it's released.